Story by Indiana Harris. One stop past Wednesday. I had a weird experience only the other year, and I still don't have a clean understanding of it. I was on my usual long train commute into work. This is the same route I'd been taking for ages. It was early, I think, around 7:45, maybe pushing 7:50 in the morning. My coffee hasn't kicked in yet. Time. Awful. Everything felt normal up to that point. Anyway, I needed the toilet desperately, so I got up and went into the next carriage. Coffee has this effect on me when I skip breakfast. The first thing that hit me, noticeably busy for that time of morning on a weekday. There were kids, actual kids, not teenagers, commuting to school, and a few older couples, grandparent lovebirds. It wasn't exactly loud, just full. Way fuller than I'd expected midweek that early, that's all. Not sure if this is part of the mystery, but why not include every detail? At the time, I do remember thinking it was odd, but not stopping to question it too much. A weird, moment. Used the toilet, came back out, and that's when it got proper odd. The light in the carriage felt much brighter than it should have been. Not blinding or anything, just more like late morning brightness rather than early morning gloom. It didn't match what I'd expected for that time, especially given how it had looked when I first got on the train, and I only spent minutes in the loop. Then I overheard one of the older women in full grandma energy say something along the lines of, "Can't believe the weekend is nearly over." She said it as if the sad emoji was plastered over every word. But hold on a minute. It was a Wednesday. Is she struggling mentally, maybe? God bless her. It's a normal work day for me, not exactly something I'd mistake. The old lady's odd words had me focus more on my surroundings. Besides the bright lights, the clothes people were wearing didn't look modern either, just slightly off. Cross between modern casual and Peaky Blinders. Same with the newspapers a couple of older guys were reading across from each other. It all felt weirdly dated, like vaguely 80s or 90s-ish, without being cartoonishly so. Subtle enough that you could almost convince yourself it could make sense. So next, I checked my phone. And this is the bit that really threw me off my rockers. My phone said, Sunday, on the date line. Not merely an hour or two off expectations, no, it said Sunday, straight up. I'm holding my phone now, staring at it almost with anger, because my whole routine that morning had been a workday routine. I'll hammer this like it's an anvil. No sane adult in good health is going to confuse a weekend with hump day. It can't be done. Can one confuse heaven with hell? I stood in place like a statue for a bit, with thoughts racing across my forehead so strong I imagined they were written on my forehead. Eventually, I sat back down, and now everything felt normal again. There was no transition, though, that I remember feeling or seeing. It was a perfect blending. The lighting on the train was appropriate, again, for the early morning. People half asleep, wearing normal work clothes, headphones in, mostly wireless, one with wires. So, yes, normal. Checked my phone again, and it was back to Wednesday. Correct day, correct time, just before 8. Even looking out the window before felt a little off, but I couldn't place why. This part of the commute was mostly tree lines. Now, there wasn't any abnormal feeling anymore. I got off at my stop a few minutes later and, out of curiosity, tried to look into that carriage from the platform as the train was there. I couldn't really make out anyone I recognized from what I'd just seen, but it was a quick glance, so who knows. All of the normal stuff out of the way, yeah. No history of hallucinations, drugs, all the etceteras. Just a dude on a train to hell. Another day, another dollar. For maybe 10 minutes, it was Sunday. What the frick? So, a space-time portal has, obviously, the time element woven into it, so can you go back into the past? In theory, it's not against any physical rules, it's just that there are paradoxes that could apply if you do. So what most physicists do to get around that is the multiverse theory. I mean, you see that a lot in the MCU and all that, but there's no primary timeline, unlike there. It's just any timeline is as valid as the other, or any universe, and if you go back in time, you're just inhabiting a different universe, one that you spawned by going back in time, and it's just another branching path, that's all. So there's no paradox. You could be back in time, and that wouldn't break anything. Of course, to go back in time involves Einstein-Rosen bridges, wormholes, space-time portals, as we like to call them here, or I like to call them anyways, which theoretically exist, but they're very unstable. You shouldn't even be able to send a proton through it. They're just that small and unstable. So unless there's some mechanism to devise an Einstein-Rosen bridge that is much larger and stable, I don't know. Maybe aliens have figured it out. Maybe our own government has figured it out. I don't know why they would test it on a train and why it would only affect you. Maybe they're not just portals, like in a fixed location. Maybe they have a space-time weapon that they can target a specific person with. Maybe it only interfaces with your mind. So physically, you were never in a different reality or universe or timeline, but mentally you were. Now, I'm blowing my own mind. Welcome, I'm Paul. This is Dave. Today I have 9 Glitch in the Matrix and paranormal stories for you. My favorite story involves God. Sort of. Don't forget to like the video, and also tell me which story is your favorite of this batch. Okay, let's get to it. Story by Brain Thief 88. A Body Revised. I've had this scar since I was like 3 years old, and it was very obvious, unmistakable. Raised, hypertrophic, not subtle at all. But you just get used to seeing it on your body forever. It becomes a normal, even important part of you. For context, it came from a lid of a can, which already sounds sketchy, and apparently I was bleeding like crazy. I obviously don't remember the actual moment super clearly because I was 3, but I've heard the story enough times and seen the scar enough that it basically felt like a core memory anyway. A memory implanted by my family, but one that is obviously real. It healed pretty thick and raised, and it stayed that way for my entire life. I'm making this point standing out just like the scar. It wasn't light. One that could conceivably, but even then, go away on its own. This thing stuck around. It had texture. You could feel it immediately if you ran your finger over it. It was noticeable enough that I'd absent-mindedly touch it sometimes without even thinking. Fast forward to literally a few months ago. I specifically remember seeing it while I was doing my nails. If you repeat an activity often, the memories can blur together, but they're still there. For me anyways. Since then, I've been doing a lot of healing work. Like nervous system regulation, stress stuff, just generally trying to take better care of myself mentally and physically. Nothing extreme or magical, just consistent work over time. Anyway, today, I happened to look for the scar again, and as is obvious by now to you all, it was almost gone in its entirety. At first I thought I was looking at the wrong spot, which sounds ridiculous because it's been on my body for my entire life. But knee-jerk was less ridiculous than it vanishing, so checking different possible angles on my arm, it's just my arm. There was almost nothing when I finally found it. It was basically gone. Not completely vanished, but instead of a raised obvious scar, it's now just the tiniest, almost microscopic indent, flat as Florida, barely noticeable. If you didn't know it was there before, you wouldn't clock it at all. And even knowing where it is, I had to double check. Wait, is that actually it? This thing was definitely still raised not that long ago. I'm not misremembering that part. It's been consistent for decades, and then suddenly isn't. I don't really have an explanation. I know scars can fade over time, but this one had been stable for so long that it just feels weird for it to change this much this quickly. It's just strange. That scar was basically my first experience ever of a glitch. And if it is just medical, it's still crazy to me. Story by Mello Marcel. The Godmakers made more. It's just I was in my attic a few minutes ago, looking over some books to donate, and a memory got triggered. I feel the need to vent this mystery. I hope you all don't feel this isn't a glitch and get annoyed. It seems like one to me, at least. Way back in 8th grade, 1995. One of my close friends, Amy, was having a huge home trouble stemming from her grown and adult sister convincing her their large family belonged to a cult, Mormonism, and the effects of the religion on their parents' parenting. Her parents were already crazy, so not good. According to Amy, the more passionate and active her parents were with the church, the more restrictive, psycho, and abusive they'd become, so she was suddenly on a mission to prove to them they're totally deceived. I felt terrible for Amy, but I had my own abuse problems, and the whole thing was monopolizing our time together. Like, after her big sis gave her this anti-Mormon book, The Godmakers, I was just a sounding board listening to Amy read it aloud and telling us how her mom reacted to this passage and that one the day before. I get into whatever trouble and end up in school suspension. We have to eat lunch alone in the cafeteria after the other 3 lunch periods are over. I'm the last to sit down at our designated table, facing the wall. What's there in my spot? Amy's book is all sticky from what smells like the Mormons' forbidden caffeinated Mountain Dew, our beverage of choice. I clean it all up in the bathroom and put it in my locker at the end of the day. The next day, I tell her in passing she can get it out of my locker. No discussion, and I didn't catch her facial expression. And at lunch, there she is with her book as usual. She picked it up. Y'all can guess where this is going. I go to my locker and yes, there's The Godmakers still there. Huh? Why? I was either kinda dumbed down by neurologically pruned teenage brain smoking too much crap, or I was justifiably convinced the chances of there being 2 of this, I rightly assume, particularly obscure religious bent book from 1984 circulating in our little school space and social sphere at the exact same time was unlikely. Like, we're nowhere near Utah, and there was legit only one LDS church in our entire county. Had phone books back then. So I'm either stupid or practical, and like, why did she put it back in my locker? I ask her. She pulls out her book out of the bag, and when I insist it was in my locker, she's actually really annoyed and incredulous. So we went to my locker. Yep, there's 2. Okay. A little statistically unlikely, but okay. She definitely thinks it's weird, so unlikely, and gets superstitious even though she claims to be an atheist. Fast forward to my early 20s. I'm a bookworm and curious person in general, and decided to read this odd orphan book I still have. It's actually super fascinating and impressive. My dad, too, is a bookworm, and a history buff and religious, traditional Protestant Christian who blows through books sitting on his potty. I hand him the book and suggest it to him, and he's like, "Oh, I saw a documentary called that a long while back." The book actually mentions a documentary that came out first, and my dad was super educated in multiple areas and an insane film and documentary aficionado, so this barely surprises me. But since he's already seen the documentary, he's a little lazy about reading. Over a few months, I'm occasionally itching to discuss the book with him and keep asking if he's delved into it yet. It really is a bit mind-blowing to me. Kept getting a, sorry, nope. A year passed, and a then-boyfriend wanted to borrow it after some discussion on cults, so I ventured into my dad's bathroom to locate it. Got it. Pass it off to my boyfriend. He reads, we discuss. Fun. We eventually move in together, and the book is again in my possession. A few years have passed, and I'm moving back home. Circumstances. My dad is looking at my library stacked on the living room floor, and goes, "Oh yeah, I finally read that one book you gave me a while back." "Which one?" "The Godmakers," and he just starts to go off on a commentary, but I interrupt him. "How? I've had it like forever." I actually know what wood crate it's in, by world religion themed, and dig it out. "Yeah, that's my book. You gave it to me." He literally grabs it out of my hands, all huffy. "Well, I'll let you borrow it, but..." He's all territorial, and I'm getting stuck arguing with him about the past borrowing vs giving, while my brain is begging to understand. What does he mean he read it? I've had it this whole time. Eventually, he marches off to the bathroom with his book, He's not even seeming to question how I had it in my stuff I just moved in, and then comes out looking all confused and defeated. Of course, there are 2 identical copies of The Godmakers in his hands. I'm like, okay, Dad, you had to have bought it or something at some point. He's like, no, it hasn't moved from my shelves since you gave it to me. And he names off the only books he's bought during that time and said I would not buy it knowing we already have it. Duh, Mellow Marcy. You got a copy somehow. Nope, I never did. I had my little orphan copy from middle school the whole time. I'm in my 40s now. When Mormons came to my door, I feel equal compassion and frustration towards them, and so I do sometimes engage with them with the knowledge that book, that I still have, now up in my attic library, impressed me. I still don't get it though. Where, why, how, just why that book? All I can do is laugh and scratch my head. I just don't know. Okay, this is my favorite story because I just love the idea of magical imbued items that can duplicate or, if you hold it, grant the wielder extra powers. I think it's just the MMORPG or RPG side of me, the gamer, that loves the idea of magical items. It's the one thing that I don't like about real life. Again, it's back to the science versus magic. I like things to be explainable, but if they're explainable, they're not magic, so the luster is gone. It's a conflicting paradox of my brain where I can't have both, but I want both. The only way you can sort of have both is a Clark deck where the whole C.K. Lewis, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Cool. Okay, so let's just say this book is an alien artifact that is incredibly advanced technology that we just can't understand. So we'll leave it at that. Or it's probably just a duplicating phenomena and the book itself isn't magical, but I like to think it is. Why would aliens create a religious text to be magical? I don't know. Maybe they want us to believe. Story by Crispy Bags. The Day the Clock Won. I was getting ready for work at the same time I always did, probably around 7, maybe 7:30 a.m., aiming to get in just before 9, like clockwork. I was one of those people who basically ran on autopilot in the mornings with the same routine and the same timing, same everything. Shower, coffee, out the door, nothing exciting, nothing of note. But on that particular morning, something already felt strange. Like when a song you've heard 1,000 times suddenly sounds slightly different, or when you walk into a room and forget why you're there. The traffic felt a bit unusual, like it wasn't quite lining up with what I expected. Not heavier, not lighter, just wrong somehow. The type of cars, maybe? I can't place it. Even the sunlight seemed like it was sitting in the wrong place in the sky, like it had skipped ahead without telling me. I remember noticing it in a half-awareness state where you're focused on getting somewhere. I didn't stop or question it, I just stored it away and kept driving. The drive itself, completely normal as far as I can recall. No detours and gridlock was light. Nothing that would explain away what happened next. I get to work, park, walk in like any other day, and immediately something feels off again. The office is way busier than usual. Then someone hits me with, "Nice of you to join us," saying it like an old man would on a construction site. Or was it, 2 minutes late? Oh, look, night shift is early. I laughed it off at first, thinking they were joking. I literally said something along the lines of, "What are you talking about? I'm right on time." That's when they looked at me like I'd just said I drove there on a horse. They told me it was already past 10:30 a.m. I remember just standing there, genuinely confused because my brain refused to process it. I checked the clocks, I checked my watch, everything agreed. I wasn't just a little late, I was hours late. And another thing that always stuck with me, I had absolutely no memory of anything unusual happening. No blank spot and no sense of time passing differently. No, oh yeah, I must have stopped somewhere. It felt like I'd left home at my normal time and arrived after a normal commute, except somehow I'd lost a couple hours in between. I tried to backtrack it in my head. Did I leave later than I thought? Nope, my routine was too autistically consistent for that, and nothing that morning suggested I was running behind. Did I stop somewhere and just completely forget? Please. I've never had memory issues like that before or since. Did I zone out while driving? I mean, maybe, but zoning out doesn't make 2 hours disappear without a trace. For context, I've never fainted, never blacked out, no history of anything neurological or mental health related that could explain it. I wasn't sick, hadn't taken anything, didn't feel off physically at all. I never even get sick. It was a normal morning that somehow wasn't. I'm generally a pretty skeptical person. I know a lot of people say that, but I don't jump to anything paranormal. A chunk of my life was taken from me, and I don't know how. Oh, and my car didn't register any extra miles. Yes, I keep track of how many miles to the first digit. In this case, 71,451. Story by Objective Lemon 3707. 35 years, and then this. I travel back and forth between 2 provinces to visit quite a few times a year. Maybe 4 to 5 times a year in all different types of weather. I travel with my mother and sister. We always take the same route. We have been traveling that highway for over 35 years. We've seen a lot of upgrades and changes. This past autumn, we had just left a smaller town that we always stop for coffee at. We drove about 45 minutes out of town when all 3 of us noticed a fork in the road that none of us remember. We all pointed it out at the same time. None of us recalled it ever being there. My mom was driving and it confused her. She wasn't sure if it was a new detour or what. We all decided to go on the right side of the fork. We drove and drove. There should have been a specific town by now, but there wasn't. There was no cell service where there should have been. We finally see a sign for a town that we had never heard of. We stopped at a gas station hoping to get some directions as we had obviously taken the wrong fork. Every person that we saw, there were not many, maybe 6 or 7, had blank, unemotional looks on their faces. None would stop to answer our questions. It was almost like they couldn't hear or see us. We drove on thinking that was such an odd experience. Maybe they were racist, as we are indigenous and everyone we saw was Caucasian? We traveled on. We came to another town that we hadn't heard of before. This time we got very reluctant help. It took an additional 2 hours to get home that day. So a fork in the road, a literal fork in the road, is a funny comparison or allegory to the choices we make in life. Now, I don't think the government or the aliens or whatever is creating these space-time portals events for people, like it's a game, like they're the DMs of Dungeons and Dragons campaign for people. That would be cool if they are doing that, though. If you have all that power and technology, why wouldn't you, right? Just have fun. Because that's the whole point of life, right? It's to have fun. It's not to work, it's not to create stuff. I mean, those are necessary components to get to the real good stuff. Fun. Entertainment, stories, ideas. And I mean, that would explain going to towns that don't exist. Maybe it's a different reality, but this seems more than just being a different universe because of how they reacted. It is almost like they're constructed automatons. The towns were fake. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Our own governments create fake towns all the time, not with fake people, but fake towns, yes. It would just be another step or another chapter of the D&D campaign for you guys. Maybe the aliens are like that. That'd be cool. I hope so. Story by Big Emotion 4963. A basket case. I was at a small grocery store near my place, just picking up a few things. It was pretty quiet, with maybe 5 or 6 other people inside. I was just walking down one of the aisles when something incredibly strange happened, but I really want to understand it. At that exact same moment, everyone else in the store stopped. Not gradually, and not one by one, all at once in unified unison. Redundant much. A woman near the shelves froze mid-step. A guy holding a basket paused like he had just forgotten what he was doing, and even the cashier looked up from the counter with the blank expressionless stare. It only lasted for maybe a few seconds, but it was very clear that they weren't just pausing randomly, they were all reacting to something. The weird part is that nothing actually happened. There was no loud noise and nothing fell. There was no announcement. There was absolutely nothing that I could see or hear to trigger it. I kept walking, just a little slower, looking around to try and figure out what they had all reacted to. Then, just as suddenly as it started, everything went right back to normal. The woman kept walking, and the cashier went back to what he was doing, like absolutely nothing had happened. The other guy started to move again, mid-stride. No one looked confused or said a word. It was like they all experienced something simultaneously, and I was entirely left out of it. I stood there for a few seconds, trying to process it, before going to the counter to pay. I almost didn't say anything, but I ended up asking the cashier if everything was okay. He looked at me like I was the one acting strange for tossing him such a random question and said, "Yeah, why?" I didn't know what to say after that, so I just left. But I cannot stop thinking about this. I know of groups that go around playing pranks wide-scale by organized activities like pausing or dancing and stuff like that, then returning to normal after a little while. But I don't think this could be that. Not inside a grocery store with a cashier involved. None would agree to lose business and revenue for a prank. Story by Add Suspicious 9128. Apples Dipped in Dread. I had a small, super weird moment the other day, and it's something I can't stop thinking about. I was just sitting on the couch, half paying attention to the TV, eating apple slices with one of those tubs of caramel. I should warn everyone to never ever buy a tub of caramel. Enter the diabetes meme. Anyway, at one point I scoop up a pretty generous amount of caramel. Okay, a blob, easily half the size of my finger. And as I lift the apple to my mouth, gravity does its thing and the whole glob just plops right onto the arm of the couch. Well, that's going to be annoying to clean, I thought. It was very clearly there. Thick, sticky, sweetly teasing, but not subtle at all. So I turn my head for maybe a second, just long enough to grab the remote and pause what I'm watching. The caramel is out of my line of sight for that tiny flicker of a moment. I turn back, already holding my hand out, pointer finger ready to just scoop it up and eat it. Because obviously, and it's South Park gone. Not smeared or the caramel is gone, but it's stained, completely gone. No shine or stickiness, no residue. The couch fabric looked totally normal. This is caramel. It makes the air sticky. I touched the spot, nothing. No tackiness at all or crystallized sugars. I smelled it. Yeah, I know. No caramel smell or any real odor. Checked my sleeves, my hands, the edge of the cushion, the floor, everywhere nearby. Nothing. I even took the cushions off the couch, thinking maybe it somehow fell perfectly into the abyss between them. Nope. No caramel blob hiding down there either. And this wasn't a tiny drip. It was a noticeable glob like I mentioned. I know this isn't exactly some wild, reality-breaking event compared to other stuff, but at the moment it was genuinely startling, and even now, days later, I'm so confused. I would say it was my protector, saving me from a sugar explosion, but it only took that little, fine, big blob, not the whole tub. Poor guardianship. Yep, just a funny story, and you tie it off with a bow perfectly because yes, if a guardian angel was trying to help you, it would just come into your pantry and raid all the sweets and pastries and all the stuff that's not really good for you. But I would hate if my guardian angel did that because that's the raison d'être. The reason to live is all the good stuff, all the good food. Even if it's not great for you. You still want to eat mostly whole foods, right? But leave room to indulge in the delectable, decadent, amazing foods too. Pizzas and burgers and pastries and cherry turnovers or strawberry turnovers, blueberry turnovers. I really like turnovers. Or a chocolate croissant, where you have a croissant, but inside there's chocolate, and you microwave it so the chocolate just gets slightly gooey. It's almost like a chocolate chip cookie in a croissant, which is just, okay. Okay. Story by Realistic Action 8195. A new project, Hail Mary. I went to see Project Hail Mary with my sister about 2 weeks ago. The rest of my family had left for an overseas trip the day before. At the counter, the guy showed us 3 containers of PHM related badges and pins. Critically, the third was writing that said, "Fist my bump." Of the 3, only Amaze had one remaining pin that my sister snapped up. We both grabbed one of each of the other 2, and I can confirm this because I saw the ones my sister held as we waited outside the theater room, and I was inspecting my own too. I especially liked the rocket pin and was planning to put it in my bag, and I mentioned as much to my sister, who had also seen what I picked. When we got back, I put the pins on my bedroom windowsill, in front of the curtains, and underneath my glasses case. The window is extremely hard to open, so it's only ever usually opened on cleaning days, which happens very rarely. There is no possibility of it being opened from the outside because there's a grate behind it. I left the pins there and forgot about them. Later that week, my sister and I also went overseas for about a week. Nobody was in the house in the meantime. No keys were given to family or friends, etc. The rest of the family isn't returning for another week from now. The day after we returned, I randomly thought of the pins and went to put them on my work bag, only to find that my rocket pin had somehow become a duplicate Fist My Bump. I was completely dumbfounded, and my first thought was my sister. She simply told me that hers were in her cupboard, and it was as she said. She had all 3 individual pins while I appeared to have 2 Fist My Bumps. My rocket completely disappeared with no explanation. My sister didn't care and traded one of my duplicates for her rocket, but I can't let go of it. I mean, I found the whole thing hilarious and couldn't stop laughing, but it's my first glitch, and as much as I've mulled it over, there is no possible explanation for this that I can think of. At no point during the time we were there in the theater was she able to go out to the front to switch her pins out or switch them with mine. She wouldn't have been able to do it at home because it was a random choice of mine to hide mine under the glasses case, which she wouldn't have guessed. She never goes into my room. She never attempted to play pranks like that, ever. It would be extremely out of character. She didn't have time to obtain another pin in another way, and we weren't aware of these pins prior to being offered them at the theater. Before we left for the airport, I had gone around my room in a last-minute check, and I had seen the rocket pin. I just don't know how on earth it got exchanged. It's a funny story for sure. I was half afraid one of the duplicate Fist My Bumps would turn into a rocket pin, but it hasn't happened. Guess it was a one-time reversion. Story by Eurotrash, a forensic challenge. I just experienced my first glitch, and I both like and hate it. I went into a changing room with 3 clothing items, each on their own separate hanger. Pretty standard try-on situation. Nothing rushed or chaotic. Just me grabbing a few things and heading in. While I was in there, I was trying stuff on, putting hangers back on the hooks, swapping things out. My boyfriend was with me the entire time, standing right outside and in, and basically seeing the whole thing as it happened. So having him there as my witness is sparing my sanity. No way we both imagined this. When I finished up, I went to put everything back properly, and that's when I noticed it. One of the hangers was gone. We both started searching immediately because realistically the room was tiny, like a small shoebox. White walls, mirror, a stool, a couple hooks, that's it. There's nowhere for something like that to go. I checked my bag thinking maybe I dropped it in there. It was a big bag so it would have room, but nope. Checked inside the clothes themselves, nope. All 3 hangers had been put on the hook at some point during the process, and there was no moment where it could have been secretly moved somewhere else. There's just physically nowhere in that space for it to disappear into. It's a small changing room. We stood there for a bit just kind of looking at each other like, okay, what now? Who do we report this to? I don't really know what to think of it. I'm not saying anything glitchy or supernatural had to have happened or anything like that, but the fact that both of us were there, paying attention, and still ended up with one hanger just not existing anymore in that room is honestly kind of unsettling. Now time for the jokes of the day. I asked my wife to rate my listening skills, and she said, "You're an 8 on a scale of 10. I still don't get why she wanted me to urinate on a skeleton. I recently got arrested for stealing a whole volume of encyclopedias. I turned to the officer and said, "Look, I can explain everything." He means everything. I asked my date to meet me at the gym today. She didn't show up. That's when I knew we weren't going to work out. Hiccups, oh boy. My wife commented that I'm definitely not French, the way I wolf down my food, so I asked her then, what am I? Without skipping a beat, she said, "You're clearly Russian." The teacher asked the kid why he wasn't paying attention in class. "I bet you can't even name 2 types of water bodies." He replied, "Well, damn." Alright, video up here if you want more glitches. Check it out, and see you next time.